Anyway.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having us.
We'll just wait a few more seconds for the last few people to enter the room. Okay, let's get started. Welcome again. My name is Mika, and I'm one of the co-directors at the San Francisco Disability Cultural Center. And thank you so much for joining us to kick off the first event of our Sustaining Us series. Just a few access notes before we dive in. If you'd like more personalized captions from stream text, you can access them at dcc.page/captions. Today's program is a panel, so we've turned off the chat for the general room for now. But if you need tech assistance, you can still message Emily, the host, through the chat or email access@disabilityculturalcenter.org. You are also invited to turn on your video, to use emojis to participate in the panel. And if there's time at the end for audience questions, we'll turn the chat back on. And now I'll turn it over to my colleague Dagny, who's also a co-director at the DCC. Dagny will be moderating our event.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I am so excited for this conversation and these fabulous panelists and creatives. So just a little bit quickly about the Sustaining Us series. A bunch of our team actually comes from like a business school background. And we, in that process, started learning and caring deeply about economic sovereignty and how do we access like our creativity and what really feeds our souls, and how do we turn that into work that sustains us and our communities and get away from capitalism to be blunt and more into the collective. So when we launched the DCC, we wanted to, in a way, kind of crip the narrative of business, of small business ownership, of financial freedom, economic sovereignty, and just have some conversations with disabled folks who are doing it and learn from each other and learn about that process. So this is our first event in the series. We're so excited to welcome Chef Lulu of Casa Borinqueña, Riz Carthins of Yarn Against the Machine, and I'm hoping that she'll be able to join us, but Sarah Young Bear Brown, who's a 5th generation beadworker, hopefully she'll be joining us a little bit later. But even if it is just the three of us, it's going to be a beautiful conversation. I will pass it first to Chef Lulu of Casa Borinqueña to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story, please.
Hi, so I'm Chef Lulu. I'm chef and owner of Casa Borinqueña in San Francisco. I started Casa Borinqueña in 2018. And I started Casa Borinqueña for two reasons. One, I couldn't find the food that I like, that was from home, something I was familiar with. And I really couldn't hold the job down. My disability didn't allow me to hold a regular 9 to 5, and I struggled a lot. And I decided to go into business for myself so I can set my own hours.
Thank you so much. Did you want to have me share the slides of some of your work? Yeah? All
Yes, you
right.
can share some slides.
And talk a little bit more about this beautiful work that you do.
Yeah, so I actually started when I started in 2018. My business was not vegan. During the pandemic, I decided to stop eating meat, and I decided to take my business and turn my business into a vegan business. And we are actually the first Puerto Rican vegan restaurant in all of California.
And what are we looking at? What are these beautiful dishes that I have on the screen right
We are
now?
looking at our pollos encebollado, which is our chicken and onions. So it's a sauteed chicken, soy-based chicken. Um, our arroz con gandules, which is our traditional rice. So this rice is usually made during special holidays. And we're looking at sweet plantains and pastelillos. Other people may know them as empanadas, but in Puerto Rico, we call them pastelillos.
We have
This one is actually our pincho sampler. So in Puerto Rico, we do a lot of street food, and I wanted to recreate a dish that mimics what I love to eat, and I decided to make the skewer that represents what I used to eat before. So this is a soy-based chicken also. So it's a barbecue soy-based skewer, but we call them pinchos back home.
and it is as delicious as it looks, y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing, Lulu. I can pass it to Riz now from Yarn Against the Machine.
Hi, my name is Riz. My pronouns are they, them. I am a radical yarn artist and wheelchair user, and I run the Yarn Against the Machine initiative, which is a disability justice-based art project. So I'll probably start with some of my like academic and political foundations. And so I've always been passionate about art. But after receiving my bachelor's of sociology and Africana studies and gender and sexuality studies from undergrad, I decided to go out on a limb and like pursue a post-bac in museum studies. But I found the traditional museum spaces were very like historical, apolitical. I was constantly being asked to separate the art from the artist and remove my emotions and politics from the art that I was being asked to present and give tours around. And so I feel like this disillusionment led me to anarchism and the work of decolonizing emotions and just understanding rage and anger not as individual burdens, but powerful tools for collective liberation. And so I started channeling these values into my art and rejecting the idea that emotions and labors should be exploited for institutional gain. And so a lot of my work centers artist resistance and community building, mostly because my disability made it really difficult to keep up with the demands of art markets, like the constant vending, the commissions, the pressure to monetize creativity. And so I started hosting monthly art raffles to become more sustainable, like as a more sustainable and accessible way to engage in artistic practice, while also rejecting the capitalist notion that people are tools for extraction and profit. And so instead of using art as means for individual survival, I use it to fundraise and redistribute resources and materially support other disabled people in my community. And I have some slides of my artwork as well that I'd like to do.
All right, let me pull those up. Oh, hold on. I'm sorry. Something funny is going on. Just one second.
Ooh.
There we go.
I've been told that my artwork is based, but the first picture is this dirty common ketchup and dino nugget blanket and pillow bundle that I made. And then we have an Eat the Rich Brat rug. So the first picture is actually crocheted, so that's hand crocheted. But the Eat the Rich Brat rug is tufted with a tufting gun. And then my ACAB PD crop top sweater is also hand crocheted. And then for Disability Wrath Month this year, I created a pro-Palestinian wheelchair wool cover. So that actually pops into my wheelchair and spins as I propel forward. And then this is a tufted land back mirror that I did for Indigenous Peoples Day. And that's actually hanging in my entryway. So that was also tufted on a canvas with a tufting gun.
Amazing. Gonna leave this up for one more little second so folks can look at it and look at the detail. Can you share just a little bit off script, but Disability Wrath Month? Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I feel like I'm probably going to speak on this a little bit later, but we often talk about disability pride. But I think in navigating disability, there's so much grief and so much anger, you know, from feeling like abandoned from the general population, the community, to, you know, feeling, you know, and just not receiving the material support that's needed, not receiving the appropriate medical care within the medical industrial complex. And so instead of Disability Pride Month, I centered Disability Wrath Month and to allow us all to have an outlet to talk about some of that grief and rage and channel that into, you know, whether that's like political artwork or anything like that. So yeah.
Thank you. Thanks both so much. I'm gonna move on to our second question. And Riz, if you're okay, we can start you out with this one. I think a nice segue, but disability and all the identities that we hold are complicated. Sometimes we can draw upon all the strength and activity and creativity from our backgrounds, and sometimes discrimination and oppression put up massive blocks. Are there experiences connected to your identities, positive, negative, or both, that you would like to share with folks who identify with your stories and work?
So I just want to say that I appreciate you for allowing space for negative experiences as well. I just feel like there's so much pressure as disabled people to be inspiring or palatable. But disabled people, especially negatively racialized folks, often are expected to share these like feel-good stories or inspirational stories because they're more palatable for non-disabled audiences to digest. But for me, disability is not just about an individualized medical diagnosis, but it is a politicized identity that is shaped by systems of oppression and lineages of resistance. And so a lot of my stepping into, you know, disability as a politicized identity is about the intersectionality of race and disability and institutional harm. And so as an Afro-Indigenous person, I grew up in a foster care adjacent, re-education center adjacent schooling environment where Black students were often assumed to be academically incapable or inferior, and we were only valued for our athleticism. And I think it's interesting because ableism is such a pervasive yet generally misunderstood form of oppression, and so much of anti-Blackness is fueled by ableism, and I feel like that's true in my experience. And so having white caregivers at my boarding school further reinforced a lot of these stereotypes and the limited support I received. And just for more context, in high school, I was a track athlete and ran the 1600 and 2400. But again, because disabled students Black students were only seen as athletically capable and not academically capable, I was expected to go to, you know, be like state champ and keep running these track meets, even though afterwards my chronic pain flares would be so bad that I would have to use a wheelchair for the next 72 hours. And all of my caregivers and my track coaches just acted like that was normal because they made it seem like that was the only way I would be successful in my life as a Black person. And so my disability or my experiences of disability are like really deeply intertwined with like race and trauma and survivorship. And it's never just one thing.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing. And when we did our prep call, you told that story, and I'm so glad that you brought it into this event because I think it's just really important grounding, and thank you. Chef Lulu, you up for answering this one too?
Yes, can you repeat the question again?
Yes, I can. All right. Disability and all the identities we hold are complicated. Sometimes we can hold and draw upon all the strength and creativity from our backgrounds, and sometimes discrimination and oppression put up massive blocks. Are there experiences connected to your identities, positive, negative, or both, that you would like to share with folks who identify with your story and with your work?
Oh, well, um, yeah, with me and my disability, because you can't see my disability, a lot of people, I realize, sometimes will minimize it, and they just expect you to just be present and ready. And I can't do that. So that actually, is like a blockage to me because people are not, are not understanding what I'm going through and what I'm experiencing. So it can be really difficult to navigate that when people, I'm bipolar, so I suffer from bipolar, and people just see you and they think you're, oh, you're normal or you're okay. You should be present and ready to go. And I can't operate that way. I actually need days sometimes to just prep and get ready. So the world is not really friendly to things like this. They're not really, I mean, unless I'm in a group like this where people are understanding of your disability, it's really hard to navigate that. So I tend to run into a lot of blockage, people, like not understanding or missed opportunities because of my disability. But I've learned that I need to work at my own pace. I need to do things that are good for me and what works for me and what my well-being is most important. And I've put that into my business. I work 4 days a week. I don't go more than 4 days. Sometimes I have to work 3 days. I realized that I needed to be capable of setting my own tone and my own road because no one was going to do it for me. No one was going to allow me that. So I needed to take control of that and do that myself for me. Did I answer it?
Yes, yes. And I'm also in bipolar, and so I feel like a real kinship with you um talking about pace and working 4 days a week, and just also how hard it is to hold that boundary and to be able to like articulate under all that pressure that like you're wrong. Like you think you see one thing, you think you're experiencing one thing. I'm me. I'm experiencing something different, and that's valid and that's real, and I'm in charge of that. So, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Um, so let's see. When we talk about sustainability, the ability to live, thrive, do what you love, and support community, um, we like in as the DCC and disability justice community reject the idea that anyone does this alone. In order to sustain, we must do this together. And this series is meant to encourage us to weave together our lives and our strengths and our struggles to build a supportive network. And I'm curious, what role has sustainability and community played in your work? Like, how has your community held you, and how does your work hold your community? Riz, do you want to start us?
Yeah, thank you for recapping the question. So, but everything you said really resonates with me, especially with the work that I do with the Yarn Against the Machine project, because it's really about rejecting the individualistic approach to disability. Just feel like capitalism frames disabled people as burdens, especially if they, unless they conform to ableist expectations of productivity or, are supported by nuclear families or romantic partners. And so within these frameworks, compassion is so often withheld, often reinforcing isolation and making interdependence even more difficult. And so a lot of the time, disabled people are made to feel ashamed or unworthy when we're asking for support. And that just only works to further perpetuate harmful narratives of self-sufficiency and hyper-independence. And so we'll touch on this a little bit more, but, I identify as an anarchist. A lot of my work is rooted in anarchist values. And I also identify as a relationship anarchist. And so for me, that's about expanding care beyond romantic love. So like relationship anarchy challenges the idea that care and support should be siloed within romantic relationships or nuclear families, like I was talking about earlier. And by rejecting these hierarchical relationship structures, I feel like it gives us a lot of space to engage in community care and collective responsibility and mutual aid. And so I guess overall, I see, sustainability as collective survival. And so no one sustained themselves alone. We build sustainability through care networks. And, my work really reflects that ethos, just, supporting folks that have historically felt like they've had to navigate hardship without support. And so, like I'm saying, we sustain each other.
Thank you so much for sharing. Chef Lulu, would you like me to repeat the question, or are you up for answering?
Sure, you can repeat the question.
I know they're long. This is the first time I've moderated a panel. I think I could work on the length of my questions. Um, yeah, when we talk about sustainability, which is the ability to thrive and live, do what you love, and support community, we reject the idea that anyone does this alone. In order to sustain, we must do this together. And this series, Sustaining Us, encourages us to weave together our lives, our strengths, our struggles, and build a supportive network. And what role has sustainability and community played in your work? And how has your community held you? And how does your work hold your community?
Well, when I decided to go into business for myself, I had just found a community in the Bay Area that I joined. And they were really welcoming to me. They allowed me to have space to do my pop-ups. They supported me whenever I said, hey, I need you, I actually played music. So this is a traditional music from Puerto Rico, which is called bomba. And my bomba community was super supportive. They were there for me when I did my very first pop-up. They brought music to the community. It was amazing because I didn't feel alone in this. This was a scary thing to do, to actually go on my own and start something and sustain myself with what I'm getting. And to have that community support you through it all has been great. I couldn't have done this without my family. My family is definitely very supportive. I'm very open with them about, what I'm feeling, how my illness is making me feel, what I go through, my struggles every day. And I could not have done this without my family and my community. I owe it all to them because this is, it's a group effort. It really is, especially when you're dealing with something that can completely shut you out of community, can completely take you away from your family. It's really important, you know, to be able to have this and to fight through this struggle, to stay part and stay present.
Thank you so much for that. And I love, um, I think both of you have like all these creativities woven together with music and food and art and, you know, all of your different modalities, Riz, and also like just creative thought. It's really amazing to see how you're just kind of flourishing in this and bringing so much to the world. So this is for Riz specifically. Anarchism is a very important part of your work and your value system. Can you share about what anarchism means to you and how centering it keeps you going? Specifically curious about your raffle concept, and is that part of your anarchism? And just share with us, please.
Yeah. So, we've talked about this, but my work is really centered on Black anarchism and divesting from racial capitalism, because racial capitalism depends upon and is predicated on an underclass, which is often Black disabled people. And so many disabled people are forced to survive through government systems of legalized poverty. Like when we talk about SSI or SSDI, or what's called disability benefits or food stamps. And because these like systems are intentionally designed to keep people in economic precarity. So a lot of my work is about minimizing our reliance on these systems and also filling in the gaps in care that the government provides. And I know, most anarchists are anti-government, but I also think about the ways in which if these benefits were to immediately disappear, so many disabled people would be left for dead. And so these are multiple truths that, we have to balance. And so, when I think about my anti-capitalist politic, I also think about what it means to be someone in a non-conforming body, because disabled people or neurodivergent individuals, neuroexpansive individuals, we inherently disrupt capitalism because we do not and cannot conform to capitalist productivity standards. And so my work is about embracing and celebrating this inherent disruption that we create as disabled people. And it's about creating alternative pathways for financial and material support outside of state dependency. And so like you're saying, my art raffles are a part of that work and just centering wealth redistribution through art. Because my art raffles are a direct practice of wealth redistribution. So, ensuring that financial support is not gatekept by bureaucratic systems and is instead driven by mutual aid and community care. And so for more context, I will create some sort of anarchist art once a month and I will raffle it off. So, anyone who has the means to redistribute funds can do so through the art raffle. That piece is, I'll do a raffle drawing for one person to be selected as the winner. The art piece is mailed to that individual, and then all the funds goes to whatever community member needed support for that month. And then I also post a payment transfer for transparency purposes.
Thank you. That's so cool. And I found you on Instagram, and that was one of the things that really drew me to you and to your stories. I was like, oh, we're always talking about what are the other ways to do this, right? And just seeing that example and you making it happen is so dope. So thank you. So this one is for Lulu. Well, actually, I'm going to pause really quickly. Um, so it looks like our third panelist, Sarah Young Bear Brown, is not going to be able to join us today. So we have a little bit of extra time. So we have opened up the chat. So if folks have questions for our panelists, please just drop them in there and we'll have some time to get to those. Um, But moving back, so Lulu, you shared in our first call that you are opening a location of Casa Borinqueña in Philadelphia, which is amazing. First, I'd love to hear how it's going. And can you talk about how you approached your decision to expand and how you are centering your well-being in the process?
Well, choosing to open in Philadelphia was all about my well-being. I am actually going to be moving completely to Philadelphia, but I will be managing my restaurant in Philadelphia, I mean, in California. Um, I think that it was taking a bit of a toll on me. Just the cost of living in the Bay Area is very expensive. And I felt that that was affecting my mental health on how I, my everyday. So I decided that I wanted to open up a second location, and I love Philadelphia. Philadelphia has such a place in my heart. So I started my search, and I'm opening up hopefully in May, I'll be opening up my second restaurant in Philadelphia. And it's all about, this is all about my well-being. It's all about what, pace can work for me. And I needed to take a couple of steps back. So this is me taking a couple of steps back and worrying about what works for me and, what will make sure that I am successful in what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Are there any like specific practices or anything that kind of like you use as you're doing like, expanding your work and making making these big moves? Like how do you ensure your mental health and just your health in general as you're like building on your workload? Do you have any practices or specific things that kind of keep you um, grounded and centered within yourself?
Making sure I get good sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Making sleep is super important because as somebody with bipolar, I can go 7 days without sleep. I can definitely, I can have a manic moment and just be completely elated and just, can do like I can do anything and then crash.
Mm-hmm.
I do tend to, I don't look, a lot of people will see, look at their mania as oh my God, this is like, it can't happen. But I feel like most of my creativity came during my manic episodes. And I am not, I'm not completely against them. I feel like it allows me the room to be creative and think about things. In those moments, I've had great ideas, and I've been able to take those ideas and work side by side. So the way I see it is I work side by side with my illness. My illness is part of me. So I need to, I've learned to work side by side it and take from it and really learn from it. Because it's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. It's with me for the rest of my life. So I need to, I treat it as its own entity. And I know how close and how far I need to keep it in order for me to be healthy. And, sleep is something that I take super serious because, like I said, I can go days without sleep. So in order to keep myself regulated, I make sure that sleep is priority in my well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And someone in the question asked about the name of my restaurant. The name of my restaurant is called Casa Borinqueña. And I think that there is one more question. Okay, I didn't see it, but yeah. So the name of my restaurant is called Casa Borinqueña.
Thank you so much. And uh yes, yes to sleep. um Riz, do you have any, would you be willing to answer that question? As your, I know it's not on, you can say, you can absolutely say no, I don't want to spring anything on you, but if when Chef Lulu was talking, if any like practices came up for you when you're working, or how you sustain your creativity, if there's anything you want to share, but feel free to pass.
Um, yeah, I think for me, especially running Yard Against the Machine independently, it's really about being honest about my capacity, which is something I struggled with for so long, but not being afraid to say like, hey, I actually cannot do a raffle this month. I am really ill. It's coming out both ends. I have no idea why. And I've been in bed, I've been bedbound for the last 2 weeks. So I will I will host the next raffle when I have time. And I think, that's been really beneficial, just being able to be honest and open in that way, and be transparent with the community of people that engage with my work. Because I have been really sick. I was really sick for the last few months with a mystery illness, and I ended up having an emergency surgery like 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, wow, I feel so much better. But had I tried to push myself the entire time that I've been sick, I think my as someone with like ME, or like, chronic fatigue syndrome, a lot of the times when I don't intentionally rest, my quality of life or baseline ends up permanently lower. And so I'll find, I think about, I'm in grad school right now. I don't want to be in grad school. But I'm trying to finish this program, and it's just made me so much, it's made me so exhausted and so tired in ways that I couldn't even fathom. Honestly, spiritually, I'm spiritually tired. Um, and so it's really being honest with my professors. Like, there's no way this assignment's gonna get, get turned in this week. I'll turn it in next week. Let me know if that's not okay. And so yeah, I think pacing is a huge part of it. And I think the advice to myself that I give all the time is just do it slower. Just do it slower. Just being able to function on my own timeline outside of like capitalist productivity standards. Because yeah, capitalism is disabling. Moving at the pace of others is disabling. So
Yeah, and like thank you both for just like rest is just, it's revolutionary. Like it is one of the hardest and most important things that we do. And I think especially when we have like, uh, one of my favorite writers says like an idea like starts as like a lump in the throat, right? Like, and I identify with that, where it's like there's this like seed, or there's this like something that needs to come out, and it's so easy to, in some ways, to just like follow that at the pace that we're trained to, or when you share it, that other people are like, you got to do it, you got to act on it, how's this going? But to take the step back and do it at your own pace and be deliberate and take that care, it's really revolutionary work. And thank you, because that is really what is able to sustain us. um so yeah, it's just really beautiful to hear that. I'm gonna have a look at the chat now, and just kind of bring in what folks have been saying. Riz says, "Go Birds." I think that's a Philadelphia reference. Because Riz, you're in Philadelphia, right?
yeah, I just said that when Chef Lulu was talking about opening the new flagship.
Yeah, it's so great. I see your hand. I'm gonna read through the chat and then get to, and then open it up to you. Okay. So April said, I'm super interested in both your businesses. With Knit Against the Machine, which I think it's Yarn Against the Machine. Do you have classes or club or knitting circles? And if so, would you be open to coming to the capital area?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I do host classes, usually at colleges, or community centers, because it's really difficult to find wheelchair accessible art spaces, if I'm being very honest. But I have recently partnered with the William Way Community Center. I'm not sure if you're all familiar with them. They're one of the oldest LGBTQ nonprofits in Philly. And I did a 6-week crochet class that was, it was an intergenerational queer crochet class that was centered on Flinta identities. So if you're not familiar with that acronym, it stands for foreign or woman, intersex, or, you know, if I could spell, woman, lesbian, intersex, non-binary, trans, and agender. And so it was a crochet class for people of marginalized gender identities. And it was really beautiful. I ended up over the course of the 6 weeks teaching the class how to make granny squares, which is a basic crochet technique to sort of create an intricate square pattern. And then we put together a cute community tapestry where everyone made a square that embodied their identity. And it was really nice to get to know members of my community, but also just like facilitate a space in that way. So I've done that. I also have a teaching opportunity at Ursinus, I always say that wrong, college coming up. So that'll be for Pride Month, specifically centering Black disability justice. And so I'll give like a small lecture on Black disability justice or queer Black disability justice, and then do a community visioning session for a tufted mural that'll go up in that community. I don't really do one-on-one art classes. I mean, sometimes, you know, folks like sliding scale just want to hop on FaceTime and they have questions or they want to like have me walk them through something. But I do have a free accessible crochet curriculum that can walk you through how to make a granny square. So I'm happy to share that, plug that. And then, yeah, if you have questions, feel free to DM me. And if I have capacity, I can hop on and show you how to do certain things. But yeah, open to traveling. But I tend to do longer format classes instead of craft circles because I like to get to know people more intimately. So yeah, I feel like more time allows for that. So
Thank you. Sounds like it would be really big pleasure to be in one of your classes. um, Maria says, Chef Lulu and Riz, you are both awesome and beautiful. I love what you're doing. I am vegan and also love the arts. The political art needs a big platform, as big a platform as we can give it. Um, and then there's lots of emojis with that. Emily's linking to Chef Lulu's restaurant. Um, Soul says, Dear Lulu and Riz, I'm living for both your brilliance and deeply grateful you all exist just as you are. Thank you for sharing your stories. How do you balance meeting your basic personal needs and challenging and channeling your time and energy into community? And then they say, for example, I live on really low minimum income because I can't do a 9 to 5 and because I give most of my time and labor to being of service and caring for collective needs, but honestly struggle to have enough to live in this capitalist world. Um, that's a big question, but does it resonate with either of you to answer it? I think it's at its nugget, how do you balance meeting your basic and personal needs and channeling time and energy into community?
I'm happy to answer, but also want to give Chef Lulu space if they. Yeah.
I actually, I set standards for myself. I set certain standards that I know what I'm capable of doing. I know what I'm not capable of doing. And I try not to overextend myself because it's a very thin line. If I have to be careful. I have to be extremely careful. And I think that I look at it that way. I look at it, I make sure that I don't do too much to put myself in any jeopardy. And in regards to what you're saying, that's the reason I went into business for myself, because I couldn't survive. I couldn't survive doing a 9 to 5. I couldn't survive on the income of, the state gives. And I really needed to be able to be self-sustained. And I I couldn't do that on any of the platforms that were available for me. And I needed to create my own platform. And that's what I did. I created my own platform and I go at my own pace. And I draw energy from my community when I need it. I hope I answered that.
Beautiful. You did great. Thank you. Riz?
Yeah, broke solidarity. 'Cause if I'm being honest, like I'm only in graduate school to use the student loans to float my rent. I have no investment. I have very minimal investment in this program, which is a little stressful because my clinical year is coming up. I'm supposed to be doing these competitive interviews for these placements. And I'm like, I don't want to be doing this at all. But part of the reason I went back to grad school was because I am in the process of reapplying for SSDI. And, you know, if you call the little phone line to talk to someone, you'll get an automated voice that says it's taking them on average 266 days to review applications. So, and then after that, you might have to go to court and appeal the decision, and then you can still get denied, right? And so that's like almost a year of my life waiting for disability benefits that may not come through. You know, my social work program, we often talk about self-care in this very apolitical way of like, wear a face mask or use a bath bomb. And I'm like, this doesn't change the fact that the place that I'm interning at is super understaffed, or I'm expected to pay $6,000 a semester for a credit where I go somewhere and do unpaid labor. Like, none of it makes sense, right? And so I think when I think about balancing my personal needs and also engaging community, I really think of Audre Lorde, and The Burst of Light, her journals on her battles with cancer. And when she talks about self-care, it's from a very depoliticized space as like a lesbian and as a feminist, and, you know, and also just like a Black disabled person. And for me, I rest intentionally, not from this hyper individualistic, like, sorry, my cat, not from this hyper individualistic place of like, you know, again, like needing a face mask or a bath bomb, but it's more so about intentionally resting so that I can show up for myself, so I can show up for my community. And so I think that's the part that people often forget, right? When we talk about rest is resistance, it's not that you rest indefinitely. Or when we talk about pleasure activism, it's not your pleasure, it's not about your individual pleasure, but it's about doing what you need to do for yourself so that you can show up for others. I think that piece is often missing or misquoted when we talk about something. Yeah.
Yes. Yes to both of you. We've got love in the chat. The Rest Deck by Trisha Hershey is amazing. I see Emily has a question, but I'm going to get to Yaz is giving you all lots of hearts and 100%. And I'm going to get to M now before continuing on in the chat.
You mentioned earlier needing a 4-day work week, and I'm starting to understand the 4-day work week similar to the way that I would understand like a curb cut. Like it needs to become sort of an infrastructure and like a culture of our civic and work environments. But I am struggling to shift that culture in the people around me. And I'm curious, like, how you've gone about the 4-day work week in your businesses.
Well, I set a standard. That's it. Like I don't play around when it comes to that. If I need 4 days, if I need 3 days, it is what it is. This is what my reality is. And I've learned to be really present with that and be really forceful with that, because I need to really be protective of what I can and cannot do. And I do what I want, when I want, and how I want, because if I don't take that and I don't do that, I can get lost in all of it. And I don't want that to happen. So I make sure that I am extremely present when it comes to making my decision. I am firm on it. I don't bend on it. And I don't feel like, where I'm at in my career, I created my own path. So I feel like I don't owe anyone an explanation anymore. I don't have to, create space to make others feel comfortable to accept me. I am who I am. I have this illness and this is how I work and this is what I do. And I'm very present about it. I hope I was able to answer that. That's just how I feel. I just feel like that.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And also, like, as a proponent of the 4-day work week, yeah, just to kind of echo what Chef Lulu just said, which is like, there's not compromise in it. And I think the way that I started doing this when I was not in an empowered position as like a director of an organization who set my own schedule is it took a lot of courage to get started with it, but it was basically sitting down with whoever I needed to sit down with and saying, look, I don't work 5 days a week because if I do that, then I will collapse. And just being very honest with like, if you put me on 5 days a week, you're gonna love me for like 3 months. You're gonna think I am the best employee, the most highest productive employee, and then I'm gonna fucking peer. Like I and then you will like if it will probably be physically disappearing, but it will definitely be mentally and emotionally disappearing. I go into a state of collapse. It is not sustainable. And um I know what I can do and I can do it better in 4 days than in 5 days. And it was a battle for in certain times, but I think eventually it gave me the space to carve my own path, to have the job that I have now with people that are unconditionally supportive. And I think also my confidence in it grew a lot as I realized that it was like an embodied truth. Um, and for me, it wasn't like a let me see if I can make this work. It was like a if I want to live, this is what I do. And just seeing over the years like it is true, it is true, I can do what I can do in 5 days, I can do it so much better in 4 and for so much longer. So I know I'm not a panelist, but I feel passionately about that one. um let's see, okay, Sheila, I'm gonna have you answer and then I will get back to the chat.
Hey there. Here, I'll give you one of those. Um, I totally resonated. First of all, I was looking forward to the the being who's a bead worker because I design jewelry. What I'm wearing right now is a pendant I bought that I just put a jump ring on and put it on a chain. It wasn't like I don't actually cut stones, but I do work with stones all the time. And I'm a musician. And I also have a full-time job. And I totally resonate with this. Um, I mean, everybody talks about these systems of oppression, and I feel awkward saying it, but I'm realizing I'm living it, and it's like, this is what this is. Um, and I feel like, I guess my question is, I my job gives me $4,000 a month. I'm still on Medicare. I'm still on Medi-Cal, which is Medicaid, and um, and I'm fighting for my life because I'm 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 too much on the left hand and too little on the right hand. Well, I'm standing in the middle. What do you want me to do about it? And I would love to get more involved in this because it's just ridiculous. I'm trying to get some medicine, for example, and Medi-Cal at the state level said to pharmacies, you cannot charge people who use Medi-Cal for getting deliveries from their local pharmacies. But if Kaiser is not allowed to charge me, they won't. Their mail order pharmacy doesn't have what I need. Their local pharmacies do, and I have to um, then pay with an Uber or a Lyft to get, you know, to get what I need. So I'm paying $30 or $40 instead of the $10 for the delivery that I can afford and would happily pay for, and they won't do it. So now I'm actually going to the state and maybe even the feds, the assembly and the state and the Congress of the feds to get this ridiculousness sorted out, and they're going to do what they want to do, and they think they're helping because they've never known what help is really.
Yeah. So Sheila, it sounds like your question might be if either of you have ever felt like you were straddling the income government assistance, like, and what that, aside from awful, um, if you have any experiences to share around that.
And then I might even have to buy a home to get rent stabilization when my Section 8 goes away. I
Yeah.
don't want to buy a home. I want
Yeah.
nothing to do with the expense and the responsibility, but that may be how I survive. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I'm terrified.
Yeah. Let's hand it over to our panelists and see if they have any thoughts on times when they've kind of straddled that position. If this feels like a question you want to answer, and always perfectly fine to just say pass as well.
Yeah, I'll answer. Everything you said resonated. First of all, Kaiser Permanente sucks. I used to work for the National Center of Complex Health and Social Needs, and they were on our board of directors, and I was doing work with DHS out in California on Medi-Cal, trying to infuse enhanced care management. And so that looks like if an unhoused person presented at the ER and their houselessness was a barrier to whatever care plan was presented, whether that looked like needing insulin but not having a place to refrigerate insulin, your doctor could write you a script for housing, and the state would be legally obligated to pay your leave-in costs. And so it was like, I was advocating for certain things like that, but it was just very clear the managed care plans did not, they did not care, or like my job was having me write power and oppression in complex care curriculum for frontline providers, and they wanted to sell it to Kaiser Permanente, and Kaiser Permanente had 75,000 frontline providers on strike for an oppressive work environment. So it's like, what are we actually doing here? So I definitely understand the frustration of of Medicaid and Medi-Cal, and I had to do something very similar when the first time I was applying for disability. It's like I can't earn more than $1,500 a month, but rent in Philly is at least $1,000. So what do I do? And I did exactly what you were talking about. I hosted an art fundraiser. This was prior to Yarn Against the Machine era, but I fundraised $20,000 and was like, look, I have to buy a home because that is the only way to give myself some sort of rent stabilization. And it's frustrating because there's so many different loopholes, like you're saying, like buying a home after your Section 8 runs out or after your housing voucher runs out makes sense because your mortgage is probably cheaper than a rent. But you also can't have more than $2,000 worth of assets in your bank account to qualify for disability. So it just, a lot of it doesn't make sense. Like I was saying earlier, I just think it's legalized poverty. It's designed to keep disabled people in this precarious state of, like, first off, heavily relying on the government, but also recognizing that the government does not sufficiently care for its like disabled citizenry. So just want to second all of your frustrations. Like, I think the point of it is there really isn't a sufficient way to navigate any of it. But if I could quickly plug my friend's business, my friend Gozi is a cryptula. And so I think they've been a large reason that I've been, very recently as my disability has been progressing, that I've been able to stay on top of things. They offer like one-on-one consultation for navigating disability, whether that's you're a newly disabled person or navigating exacerbating disability, processing the grief around that, and also just helping with medical industrial complex navigation. So that looks like helping me schedule doctor's appointments, being the person to yell at someone on the phone when, you know, like I've been applying for a home health aid and they've been asking for 5 years worth of bank statements from every bank that I have, proof of purchase of a car, like proof of insurance, just my lease, like my grad school enrollment. And it's like, if I'm someone who's been bedbound for the last 3 weeks and you know that I'm applying for a personal aid to help me with these things, who do you think is helping me with them? And so my friend Dozie has been largely instrumental in helping me navigate those things. And so I would say, you know, we see that the government doesn't work, lean on your community, find out people who are doing peer support like this, people who are doing crypto consultation, and just relying on each other to get through it, you know, creating resources on how to navigate that. And so I feel like that's another large part of Yarn Against the Machine. It's not just art, but I also publish resources. And so that can look like the chronic illness care planning template that I publicized and 500 people downloaded and utilized because they were having trouble communicating their access needs to their loved ones and having their boundaries around navigating disability respected. Or I had just previously published like how to get a custom wheelchair through insurance or not through insurance in the so-called US, because that process is so convoluted. And it's like, what are you doing with your life if you need a wheelchair and can't get one, right? Like, what are you doing in the meantime? So sorry, that was a bit of a ramble, but yeah, I think it looks like utilizing the benefits from the government that, you know, you need, but also recognizing that there will always be gaps in that care and leaning on your community or finding people in your community that can support you through that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was super insightful. And that was a great question. Thank you so much. That's so real when we talk about this. And I think the answer of like what you're getting second into the chat, which is like it's forced poverty and there's no way around it. And that's why we do community. And yeah, I think that that's great. So we have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to read through the chat and then I have one last question that is kind of um, piggybacking on what Emily Chen is saying, which is what advice do you have for those who are evaluating whether career change is right for their well-being? So I'm just going to stick a pin in it and just go through some of the love y'all are getting in the chat. Maria says you need to set healthy boundaries. Yaz is absolutely agreeing with what one of you said at one point, but I mean, everything is. Ev says, thank you, Riz, for mentioning the bureaucracy behind getting benefits. In Ontario, Canada, the waiting time for processing an application went from 3 months to 9 months, largely caused by the impacts of COVID. And Riz, you said it's so frustrating and designed to wear us down and disappear us. And, you know, I think the question on everyone's mind is, Riz, your cat is precious. What is their name? And it is Leia, like Princess Leia. Also, you have a gecko named Lark, Ellie, and the Witcher The Witcher Blood Origins. Let's see. More clapping hands, more you go, girl. Maria says we all know what is best for us, not someone else telling us what to do. Penny says it isn't a real Zoom if there isn't a cat involved. True words. Yaz says that's why I have to go into freelance and eventually into business of my own. It just makes sense to me and what my body and mind needs. Soul says, Chef Lulu, I just do what I want, when I want, how I want, with all the flames. Yaz says navigating healthcare is especially hard now as a trans disabled person in America. It's exhausting and I'm completely over it. Penny says legalized poverty is exactly the point. And let's see, Sheila, will resources reference be shared out? Definitely want them and will amplify. Yeah, absolutely. Drop whatever links y'all want in the chat and we can share out that. Yeah, a request for the links to the chronic illness download and also your friend's business. So, my last question is, you know, advice doesn't always feel good, but it can be a way of communicating wisdom and care. And I think a lot of people are identifying with your stories and your perspectives. And I'm wondering if, instead of giving advice, or you can give advice if you want, but can you channel that wisdom and care into words of encouragement for anyone feeling like they need a boost and some extra love? And just to tack on what Emily was asking for, if you have any encouragement for folks that are feeling like they need to go create that path for themselves right now. And we can start with Lulu.
Well, I know it sounds cliche, but my whole thing is keep going. Um, keep going. It's it's not meant for it to be easy, unfortunately, but you have to keep going. And you have to find strength where it's available for you. Find strengths from friends, family, be open about what your struggle is. And you'll be surprised at how much help you can get from your own community and from your own family. You just have to be transparent. I think transparency is super important when you're dealing with an illness that is directly correlated to your financial being. Living on a fixed income it's really hard. And I think that seeking out community to learn more about what resources are out there for you, because there is resources. I mean, there's not a lot of resources, but there is resources, and what we make of it is what we make of it.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you so much. Riz, do you have any words of
Yeah,
encouragement and wisdom to share?
of course. I mean, I feel like I should be better about this. I think I'm in need of some wisdom, so it's a hard place to be. Also, you think I'd be better at this, giving advice as a therapist, but kind of blanking right now. I think the things that I would say, probably start with the fact that like healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens. And I just so often when we're going through hardships, we want to isolate or we want to do things alone. And I just want to encourage you to lean into your community. Because it sounds like, that's resonating with everyone, feeling very like isolated and having to navigate bureaucracy or like limited capacities and things like that. And I just think, yeah, don't be afraid to ask for help. And, 9 times out of 10, you might hear no. Be prepared to receive a no. But the quote that I always say is like, I'm already at a no. So why not just speak up and ask for the thing? So I think asking for help has largely supported me in building my capacity to show up for my community. And once you ask for help, also be open to receiving the care that's being offered because you deserve it. I think so often we're in such deep states of survival, again, because we feel largely abandoned by our communities or the government, that we don't know how to ask for care. And then when it is being offered, we don't know how to receive it. And so I just want to encourage you all to work on your individual capacities, learn to show up for yourself so you can show up for your community. And just recognize that regardless of you're not a burden and there are people out there going to support you through what you're going through. So.
Thank you both so much. And Chef Lulu, I love what you said about transparency and finding that strength when you can and leaning on community. And Riz, I think it's just so important to highlight that it is important to ask for help and also like learn how to receive it. And it's hard work, but I also think that there are a lot of really amazing people, and I hope that we can have some community come out of this as well. This series, and it's all about building that community because I know we all feel isolated, and I know there have been many times in my life when I have sat and watched a panel like this and been like, okay, great, community. Wouldn't it be nice if I had one of those? Like, how do I get one of those? And I think that that's really what I'm hoping that we can try and establish here, whether it's online or in person. And so I really want to encourage everyone here who has ideas, who wants to connect with community, let us know. We want to we want to create this community. We want to be there to support each other through all of these, beautiful, difficult times and really like recognize our collective brilliance and creativity and make it a reality for as many people as possible. So, thank you both for all of your effort, for showing up, for being here, for all of your wisdom and sharing your stories. I'm going to pass it over to Mika now to close us out. Thank you all so much.
And thanks for joining us for our launch event of the Sustaining Us series and talking about community. Our Discord, the DCC Discord, is now up and available so that you can continue these conversations and be in community with others. You can find that at dcc.page/Discord. You'll also receive a survey via email, and we'll put it in the chat now. It would mean a lot if you could fill it out as we launch this series. So we'll put that in the chat as well. And we have upcoming events for these times, including an altar building event on Friday. Next week, we'll have Together Time, where we can just be in community together, and our second Sustaining Us event on fiscal sponsorship. So we're also dropping the link to our link tree in the chat, which is dcc.page/links, where you can find out more, sign up for events, and follow us. Today's program was presented to you by the San Francisco Disability Cultural Center, which is a collaboration led by Elsie and Lily Cox, Haven of Hope, with support from the Paul K. Longmore Institute on Disability at San Francisco State University. All made possible thanks to contributions from the City of San Francisco's Human Services Agency's Department of Disability and Aging Services. So thank you again to our panelists and moderator, to our wonderful Access team. Thanks for being with us today, and we'll see you next time.